On December 13th, the year 2000, 7 inmates reached the absolute final step of their plan. Between them and total freedom, there was only one step left. But something completely unexpected happened that shifted the course of the entire operation. In every prison escape story you've ever heard, the common denominator was fear. But in this operation, fear wasn't the main feeling. It was terror. Before we dive into today's story, you need to understand how prisons actually work, especially in a country like the United States. In the judicial system, when someone commits a crime, their punishment depends on the severity of the offense. It ranges from fines to community service and culminates in life imprisonment or the death penalty. But not all prisons are built equal. Most people know about correctional facilities, places meant to discipline and rehabilitate inmates so they can re-enter society as better human beings. Scandinavian countries like Denmark and Finland are famous for this. But then there is another type, isolation prisons. These are maximum security fortresses designed for inmates serving multiple life terms or waiting on death row. There is no rehabilitation here. The goal is to keep them contained until they die. The conditions are brutal, the discipline is merciless, and every detail, even the daily calorie intake, is carefully calculated to keep prisoners physically exhausted, so they never have the energy to think about a riot or an escape. This brings us to Connally Unit in Texas. Named after a former government official, this prison is a literal metal fortress located in the middle of a barren desert. It is surrounded by 3 massive chain-link fences separated by 5-meter thermal camera zones, with guard towers stationed everywhere, equipped with high-powered rifles. Inside, life was absolute hell. Inmates belonged to violent gangs, and guards often looked the other way during internal rivalries. Escaping from a place like this was scientifically considered impossible. If you tried to run, you'd be shot. If you somehow made it past the fences, you were stranded in miles of open desert, with patrols circling the perimeter constantly. Enter George Rivas. Rivas was only 28 years old when he entered Connally Unit, but he was serving 18 consecutive life sentences for armed robbery and kidnapping. In just 2 years, Rivas survived over 22 internal assassination attempts. He didn't belong to any gang, making him an easy target in a sea of wolves. That was until he met Joseph Garcia. Garcia was serving a life sentence as well, but he possessed a brilliant analytical mind. For 8 years, Garcia had been quietly observing the prison's daily routines, studying every guard shift, every truck delivery, and every camera angle. Together, Rivas and Garcia realized that starting a massive riot with thousands of inmates would only get everyone slaughtered. Instead, they discovered the single ignored flaw in the entire fortress, the maintenance workshop. The workshop was separate from the main cell blocks. Maintenance workers were swapped regularly, and heavy machinery, delivery vans, and tools passed through it daily. But to pull off a heist like this, they couldn't do it alone. They needed a team, not just anyone, but inmates who had nothing left to lose, whose physical health was still intact, and who were desperate enough to risk everything. They recruited 5 other men, creating a quiet unit of 7 convicts. Rivas, Garcia, Larry Harper, Michael Rodriguez, Randy Halprin, Patrick Murphy, and Donald Newbury. On the day of execution, at exactly 11:20 a.m., during the busy lunch hour, the group split up. 4 of them crept toward the maintenance workshop. When they arrived at the door, They were shocked by two things. First, the door was completely unlocked. Second, there was nobody inside. In high-stress situations like this, the human brain freezes when something unexpected happens, even if it's positive. Panicking for a second, they stepped inside and found brand-new maintenance uniforms still in their packaging. They quickly changed, and minutes later, the remaining 3 members joined them. Then began the second phase, taking out the guards one by one. A guard walked into the workshop and noticed them working. When he asked what was going on, they told him there was an electrical fault in the back control room. The moment the guard stepped inside the room, all 7 men pounced on him, bound him, gagged him, and took his loaded sidearm. They repeated this exact psychological trap 7 times with 7 different guards, taking their weapons, uniforms, and radio equipment. Now fully armed with handguns, shotguns, and extra ammunition, they moved to the final obstacle, the rear gate. The rear gate had only 2 perimeters and was designated for service vehicles. Dressed as maintenance workers, 4 of them climbed up to the 2 guard towers overlooking the gate. They knocked on the tower doors, entered pretending to fix a wiring issue, knocked the tower guards unconscious in seconds, tied them up, and confiscated their high-powered rifles. At this point, as you listen to how smoothly everything went, your brain might naturally start rooting for them. You get caught up in the thrill and hope the plan succeeds. But remember, these were not heroes. These were some of the most dangerous, ruthless criminals on the planet, and their freedom meant immediate danger for everyone else. With the towers secured, all 7 loaded into a stolen prison maintenance van and drove directly toward the main exit. When the gate officer saw the familiar maintenance vehicle approaching, he didn't even ask for identification. He simply hit the button, swung the heavy iron gate open, and let them drive out into the open desert. It took 4 whole hours before the prison administration even realized 7 dangerous convicts were missing. By the time the alarm finally echoed across Texas, the men had already reached a gas station miles away. But here came the reality check. They had successfully broken out of an unbreachable prison, but they only had $53 stolen from the guards' wallets. Realizing they couldn't survive in hiding without money, their dark nature took over again. Instead of staying quiet, they embarked on a terrifying 40-day crime spree, robbing stores, stealing cars, and terrorizing local towns. Just 2 days before New Year's Eve, they raided a sporting goods store, stealing 40 advanced firearms, thousands of rounds of ammo, and $70,000 in cash. But as they were leaving, an innocent 29-year-old police officer named Aubrey Hawkins arrived at the scene. Without hesitation, the gang ambushed and murdered him in cold blood. That single act mobilized the full force of American law enforcement. Federal agents, SWAT units, and helicopters launched one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Within weeks, all 7 were tracked down and surrounded. 2 of them actually contacted a national television station, agreeing to surrender only on live broadcast so they could make a public statement about prison conditions before being taken away. Every single member of the Texas 7 was sentenced to death. Between 2003 and 2024, state authorities executed them one by one. They broke a prison that was said to be impossible to escape, breaking a legendary record, only to meet the exact fate they tried so hard to run away from. So tell me in the comments, do you think justice was served, or did the system create the very monsters it had to execute? Let me know your thoughts, and as always, I'll see you in the next story.